If you've ever Ho Chi tunnels, then you'll probably understand exactly what the following remarks by American tourists are. The Ho Chi tunnels are not for the weak-hearted. In the cellar is very hot, dark and narrow, just over 1 meter high and 60 centimeter wide with the camera carried. I could only crawl with my hands and knees. As you walk in this tunnel, you are almost walking in the dark. The closer I got to a hatch, the more I clicked foul bait. I wondered how one could live monthly in this tunnel when only a few minutes for me seemed to have been a very difficult challenge. An American soldier returned to visit Ho Chi tunnels after the war, and had to say, the tunnel here is like the New York subway line. The above comments can show us how amazing it is to build, live and work in the Ho Chi tunnels. The tunnels that day were the place where a great intellectual battle took place between the Vietnamese army and a mighty American army. The two sides must constantly think of ways to counter each other's hits. In 1966 the US organized a trap campaign, mobilizing up to 12,000 troops, the Air Force, tanks and artillery to attack the Ho Chi tunnels. A campaign in which the US military was very confident in a victory. But Vietnam predicted it a year in advance, so Vietnam prepared everything very carefully. The tunnel system has been expanded, the scale and the more majestic in the past. It was digging the type of house that knew that house, but now the houses are linked together, designing the place to eat and sleep. Warehouse and weapon smelter are all well planned. That day when organizing the campaign trap, the purpose of the US was just to siege the guerrillas below Ho Chi. The US simply thought that there were guerrillas in Ho Chi, so just bringing troops down there and traps would catch some guerrilla teams as easy as mousetrap. However, that day, as soon as the American soldiers set foot in Ho Chi, the US was beaten by Viet Cong soldiers, humiliating failure. The US had a large army, good weapons, chased back by the Vietnamese army like a Hollywood's action movie. But the US chased after a little. They could not see any trace, making American soldiers extremely scared because of the feeling. It's like fighting a ghost. Besides, this tactic was too new. American soldiers were not trained yet, so they didn't know how to deal with it. Fighting for a while, the US finally discovered its hatch covers above the tunnels. They immediately pumped smoke into the hatchways to identify the remaining outlets. In essence, the US thought that pumping gas in like that would suffocate. Viet Cong had to get out on another hatchway, but when the US did it, they understood. It turned out that Vietnam's tunnel system was too wide, pumped the smoke down the hatch, but never saw the smoke coming out anywhere. Everything was beyond the imagination of Americans, and the US was very difficult to deal with. American soldiers' duty was to find the hatches, the vents to get oxygen, because it understood that no one designed only one door. Surely there must be a back door, or the other side doors. Along with the inability to live forever underground without oxygen, there must be many other places. However, Vietnamese was disguised so well that it was difficult to detect. The door was covered to look like tree leaves. The vents were camouflaged like termite nest, but with their eyes, they can't tell where the nest was, where the camouflage. That's why Americans think all the way to find the hatch and those termite nests. Just find the hatch, or the oxygen extraction, or the water pump, or pump the gas in any way. North Vietnamese soldiers are gonna die. In order to know where the hatch is located, the US had to send people to put on a stethoscope to check it, as if it were measuring blood pressure for the ground in Ho Chi. The purpose of doing this is to see where there are noises below, then localize the area to make sure there is a hatch, or vent. Just find and attack it. That way in theory is fine, but in reality such listening is very time consuming and the productivity is not high, because the Ho Chi tunnels are too wide. That is why the US used a team of hunting dogs that specialized in sniffing. This is a breed in West Germany, each of which was worth tens of thousands of dollars, was well trained, different from China sniffer dogs, and was awarded a decent rank before being brought to Vietnam. This kind of work for a salary. The death is buried, and held a drumming funeral. Its mission when going to Vietnam is that wherever there are holes, a bit of people rising up, it is necessary to sniff out to report the commanders. This makes it very difficult for Vietnamese troops because the positions are revealed. Now the military has to think of a way to counter them, but if they just let them sniff like this, they fail to plan. In order to overcome these fighting dogs, at first the Vietnamese army came up with a way to puree dried chili and pepper powder mixed together and sprinkled it in the vents. This method works quite well at first when it neutralizes the dog's sense of smell, but the hard thing is to inhale the stuff and the dog coughs and the US discovers Viet Cong hiding area. The problem is again more difficult for Vietnamese soldiers. But fortunately that day, the Viet Cong had devised a way to get the soap, clothes and perfume of the American soldiers to put in those places. The well-trained dogs were very familiar with the smell of their bosses. Therefore, when it smells that, it will pass. It does not report anything to the leader. Dogs were disabled, but back then, where did we get so much soap, clothes, and perfumes and put in all of our vents? That is why the Vietnamese military also launched a movement to fight dogs. Traps in Chu Chi are created, both trapping people, but also trapping dogs. The hatches like these are also used to destroy the hunting dogs. Every dog that gets lost, wanders off, inhales and would hit it a bullet from the Vietnamese soldier immediately. According to published documents, after the campaign to use dogs to beat the Chu Chi tunnels, a total of 300 hunting dogs died and were killed by guerrillas. It is once said that, wherever dogs go, apricot leaves grow there, which is probably the reason that some culinary experts believe that is the reason why Vietnamese people eat dog's meat a lot. Along with that, they also said that the American dog officers escaped from danger easily because that day fell on the 1st and 15th. In Vietnamese culture, they do not eat dog's meat on these 2 days. Of course, it is just an inference that is just a joke, but in fact, whether or not it is true, we have not seen any documents recorded. Some people may question, so how about the dogs that were not killed by Vietnamese people? According to some documents, after the Paris Agreement was signed, only 204 out of thousands were left for duty in other places. The rest were discarded because of exhaustion. Some dogs are traumatized, because they stepped on their minds too much while on duty. Using a sniffing dog does not work. The US has devised a way to pump tear gas into the tunnel through the holes it knows. Tear gas is a non-lethal substance, but is often used to prevent riot because it burns in the eyes, nose, and mouth when it is stuck. It makes Vietnamese guerrilla soldiers very uncomfortable, because resisting the tear gas on the ground is too easy, but living in the basement without a poison mask, nothing can stand it. After a few days, the Viet Cong also thought of a way to counter it. Because the tunnels are designed in many levels, I have created hatches to stop the floors. If you hear someone screaming upstairs, you should immediately close the door to prevent the gas from spreading. Along with that, with experience in Oriental medicine, in case of being caught with tear gas but unable to escape, their team will have to pee on handkerchiefs and cover the mouth, eyes, nose, because simply there is ammonia which will relieve pain from tear gas burns. Everything America thinks is sublime, but the reality is nothing difficult with the army and people of Chu Chi. Using tear gas was ineffective. The US switched to using water to flood the cellar. This way, the US feels much more feasible because the Chu Chi tunnels are located near the Saigon River, so absorbing water from the Saigon River and pumped into the tunnel cannot escape. No matter how large the tunnels are, the water pump will be flooded in. The plan is like that, but implementation is completely different. The tunnel system is hundreds of kilometers long, so when the water is pumped in, the water is partly absorbed into the ground. Another part, if it is flooded, it will only flood one part, otherwise, it follows the paths leading to the end of the Saigon River. For America, thinking of water pumping is like the invention of fire by mankind, but for the soldiers and the people of Chu Chi, it is like a child's play because they have calculated from before they built it. That is why if you suck water from the Saigon River and pump it in, it finally comes into the Saigon River. The tunnels are separated by waterproof doors, so the places are still safe to operate. Every time America uses pumped water like that, the Vietnamese soldier inside often jokes with each other, lift up your feet to wash the cellar. Neither water nor tear gas is effective. So why didn't the US use the bombs to pour into the vault? Then the Viet Cong had to give up. Of course, American soldiers are well trained, so there is no reason why they wouldn't think about it. They even bombed a lot more advanced than the Vietnamese thought it would. This video is already long, so the story about this, we'll see you later in the next video.
How do you think about this topic? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share this video. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our videos and much more. Click on the screen to watch another thrilling video. Thank you for joining us. See you in the next one. Take care.